Okay, in understanding Lincoln, there are two primary sources that more than any others really identify who Lincoln is. And this is in Lincoln's words, okay? This is Lincoln talking about how Lincoln feels about Black people and about how he feels about Black people in relationship to the country and in relationship to the Civil War. One is the letter to Horace Greeley. You can look that letter up. It's not hard to find. That letter is written in response to a letter Horace Greeley published in a New York newspaper to Abraham Lincoln, in which Abraham Lincoln responded to that letter. Horace Greeley felt that Abraham Lincoln was being too light on the institution of slavery, and Lincoln responded about how he felt about slavery, how he felt about Black people, and how he felt if he felt it was an emergency or not, or how high of a priority abolishing slavery was and to what extent. It really talks a lot about who Lincoln is. And outside of high Lincoln scholarship, you don't hear about that letter a lot. You do hear about it in Lincoln criticism, but unfortunately, there's not a lot of Lincoln criticism in common Lincoln conversation. So most of the time you get to Lincoln criticism, it is in high Lincoln or historical conversation or scholarship discourse. The second is Lincoln's address on colonization. Now, this is one of the least known, and even in where it's known, it is either misunderstood or just flat out misrepresented. It is Lincoln's address on colonization. And you will hear this, it'll be called the delegation of Negroes, the deputation of Negroes, the address on colonization, but it is a speech Lincoln delivered August 14th in 1862. This speech was delivered to a group of Black men. Why is this important? This was the first time that a president spoke to Black men about policy. Not only was it the first time a president spoke to Black men, this was the first time a president spoke to Black men about policy in the White House. A very formal situation that Blacks were not a part of up until this point in 1862. Now, what makes, before we even get into the primary source, what makes this primary source very valuable is first how it's been misunderstood. Obviously, going under the presumption that Abraham Lincoln is Father Abraham, it has been communicated that this was part of Lincoln's egalitarian nature, and this particular speech or occasion has been it's been characterized as an example of equality, or Lincoln's recognition of equality, that he's speaking to these men because he sees these men as equal, and no other president has ever had that epiphany or that perspective. And unfortunately, that is not true, because if you read the speech, you will find out this is probably the most this speech offers the most evidence that Lincoln was the complete opposite of what American lore has represented him as. And again, what is the point of representing Lincoln, misrepresenting Lincoln? And the point is, the story of Lincoln was chosen to be the story of white redemption, the story of American redemption. And that's why this particular president has been cloaked in protection, and any criticism of Lincoln is not very well received. But in this speech that is allegedly an example and have been put forth as an example of Lincoln's egalitarianism, it says something about historians and American popular culture, because though the people who heard about this speech and being told that this was a speech to show that he saw black people as equals, so he was the first president to address them, maybe those people who were told about this speech didn't read it, but the people who were telling about the speech probably had. And they read it, especially the scholars. And they know that that's not what this speech is. And in all of my research, unfortunately, I haven't found a scholar that has pointed this out. So let's start off. Number one, Lincoln had a group of black leaders from the Washington, D.C. area to come in and hear, to discuss some policy with him. Now, these are educated freedmen. These are not black folks on plantations that's only hearing Abraham Lincoln is fighting against the slave owner. So the slave owner is like the enemy of the slave is thinking the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's how a lot of black people got the wrong interpretation or the wrong idea of who Lincoln was. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. When Lincoln wasn't their friend. Lincoln said in his letter to Horace Greeley, if I could save the country without freeing the slaves, I would. Basically, anything black people get from what I'm doing is coincidental. I'm here for the country. To which he didn't see black folks as a part of it. And we'll find out in this meeting. He knew that speaking to black folks would be newsworthy. And he used this speech as political propaganda for newspapers to cover, to spread out the word of colonization, because he wasn't getting the traction that he wanted on colonization. And again, colonization was his desire to ship all black folks out of the country. And we'll find out why in Lincoln's own words. Basically, Lincoln comes in and he asks, one question in the beginning and one question in the end. The last question he asked was rhetorical. And the first question was relatively rhetorical too, because he knew everybody that was coming. What he asked them were, are you, I'm assuming you all are freed men. They said yes. That's all that they said in this entire conversation. So it wasn't a conversation. It was actually a lecture. I'm going to try to do this without my glasses, but if we need to put them on, we're going to put them on. Lincoln starts off, you and we are different races. Just listen to that. You, we. Okay? The person who sees no color not only starts off making a clear representation of color, he's picked a side. And he's going to continue doing that. I just want to point this out. You and we are different races. We have between us a broader difference than exists between almost any other two races. Whether it's right or wrong, I need not discuss. Stop. You will find something consistent with Lincoln. Lincoln doesn't care. He's saying this is the core problem that's causing the Civil War. But I don't even want to discuss if it's right or wrong. I don't want to discuss justice. That's Lincoln's words. I'm not making this up. Whether it's right or wrong, I need not discuss. But this physical difference is a great disadvantage to us both. I think your race, you, again, my argument is Lincoln is a man of his time. Everybody else's argument is Lincoln's a man ahead of his time. Looks like man of his time to me. I believe your race suffers greatly for many of them living among us, while ours suffer from your presence. Stop. Let's touch that again. As I think your race suffers very greatly, many of them by living among us, just by being around us, you're going to suffer. That's what he said. While ours suffer from your presence. Lincoln says, not that y'all do stuff to us, not that y'all raping us, not that y'all hanging us, not that y'all owning us, not that you all are lying to us, not that you are committing crimes against us, not that you are claiming ownership to our labor. We suffer because you are present. Of course, he doesn't take any ownership in the fact that black folks that he's talking about were brought here. Now, the black folks who was already here, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the slave folks. We brought you here, and he's saying white folks suffer just by your presence. This is Lincoln. His own words. In a word, we suffer on each side. If this is admitted, it affords a reason, at least, why we should be separated. This is Lincoln talking. You here are freedmen, I suppose. It's the only time that the black men speak. Yes, sir. That's it. Perhaps you all have been free all your lives, your race suffering in, by judgment, the greatest wrong inflicted on any people. I agree. But when you cease to be slaves, you are yet far removed from being placed in the equality with the white race. So he's saying, even if you're free, you're not equal. So he's framing his point, but he's saying, even if you're free, Y'all not equal to us. Just saying. You are cut off of the advantages which the other race enjoy, which is saying you can't access wealth like white people can. The aspiration of men is to enjoy equality with the best when free, but on this broad continent, not a single man of your race is made equal to a single man of ours. Again, you, us. I'm picking a side. Not Americans, because that would cause we and us. You, ours. Go where you are treated best, and the ban is still upon you. I do not propose to discuss this, but to present it as a fact with which we have to deal. I cannot alter it if I would. It is a fact about which we all think and feel alike, I and you. We look to our conditions owing the existence of the two races to this continent. But for your race among us, there could not be war. I skipped down a little bit, but for your race among us, there could not be war. Lincoln, Father Abraham, the great emancipator, said the war is black folks' fault. I'm going to back up one sentence. See the present condition of the country engaged in war. Our white men cutting one another's throats, none knowing how far it will extend, and then consider what we know to be truth. But for your race among us, there could not be war. So basically, I didn't care about the violence of slavery in American society until white men start cutting other white men's throats about it. When the proverbial chickens come home to roost, as Malcolm X said, it wasn't a problem before then. We'll keep going. Nevertheless, I repeat, without the institution of slavery and the colored race as its basis, the war could not have been in existence. He said it twice. Black folks is the problem. Not the white people that started slavery, not the white people that's trying to extend into Western Western expansion. Not the white people that can't agree in Congress. The black folks is what caused the Civil War. Again, this is Lincoln. This is Lincoln's own words. This is not a secondary source. This is not what somebody is saying about Lincoln. This is Lincoln. It is better for us both, therefore, to be separated. I know that there are free men among you, even if they could better their condition, are not as much inclined to go out of the country, and those who, being slaves, could obtain their freedom on this condition. Yeah, they go down. There is an unwillingness on the part of our people, harsh as it may be, for you free colored people to remain with us. He's saying white folks don't want you here, so leave. Not, you built the country. What happened to you is not right. He said, white folks are not going to treat you right. Leave. He said, skip down a little bit. If intelligent colored men, such as those before me, flattery, would move in this manner, much might be accomplished. It is exceedingly important that we have men at the beginning capable of thinking as white men. Now, if you look, again, I am not political. I don't vote. I will never vote. But if you look at the political landscape, look at everybody trying to be, well, not everybody, but there's about 3 or 4 black men trying to be Trump's vice president. These are men who are capable of thinking as white men, in my estimation. So some things don't change. Now, he's saying, I want you to help me get this started in shipping all these black folks out of the country. And it needs to be intelligent guys like you to start it off, because your intelligence is based on your ability to think like white men. Now, he then begins to go in on where he's trying to send them. Because one thing in my dissertation I put in was that in 1861, Lincoln recognized Haiti and Liberia. I haven't seen any historians recognize that as a significant historic event. But that was the beginning of Lincoln assuming control of colonization and moving black folks out of the country. That was the beginning of his attempt. Here's how I know. The colony of Liberia has existed for a long time. In a certain sense, it is a success. Now, anytime somebody tells you something is a success in a certain sense, that means that what goes with that is implicitly, in a sense, it's not. Or in many ways, it's not. Or you have to look at it a particular way for it to be a success. But he says it right here. In a certain sense, it is a success. The president of Liberia, Roberts, has just been with me, and the first time I ever saw him. Now, Liberia has been a nation almost 20 years at this point. This is the first time he's ever seen him. Haiti has been an independent nation for 40 years, since 1807. And no communication. In fact, no president had recognized Haiti or Liberia up to this point. And he's trying to convince them to go. And he's saying, you know, they have 300,000 or 400,000 people there in Liberia. It's about the same size, it's bigger than Rhode Island or Delaware. And they're all not American colonists. Their descendants. Something less than 12,000 have been sent thither from this country. Many of the original settlers have died and new offspring have taken over. The question is, if the colored people are persuaded to go anywhere, why not there? One reason for an unwillingness to do so is that some of you would rather remain within reach of the country of your nativity. I do not know how much attachment you may have toward our race. It does not strike me that you have the greatest reason to love them, but still you are attached to them in all events. Now, Lincoln is saying that this is the country of your birth, but the reason why you want to stay here is because you're in love with white folks. That's what this is saying. One reason for the unwillingness to do so is that some of you would rather remain within reach of the country of your nativity. The next sentence I didn't skip. I do not know how much attachment you may have toward our race. Because now the our in you, in us, and them, that's already been established. So it cannot be confused when he says our race. It does not strike me that you have the greatest reason to love them. But still, you are attached to them at all events. So he's asking, when y'all gonna start hating white folks? He's trying to bait them. Like he's so much smarter than them. To tell them, leave your home, everything you know, everything you've built, all your businesses, all your everything, because he's talking to free men. And you go where I'm telling you to go because I know better than you. Leave the country that you built physically. That doesn't mean that white people didn't help build the country. But it does mean that black people did too. And just like no one has the authority to tell white people where they belong in a country they made, same goes for black folks. But again, this is evidence of a man of his time. And it's many more pages to this document. And for the sake of this video, we're going to wrap it up. Lincoln is not a bad person. Again, every American that has educated themselves, that's raised a family, that lives in a good community, that has had a good job, that has had grandparents do well, and brothers and sisters and friends and all of the things that we enjoy in America, where people like to come here despite the historic faults and violence and genocide and systematic racism and economic disinclusion and all of those things. Things that we enjoy most about this country, we owe to Lincoln. This country had the ability to be very different, but for Lincoln. That is why he belongs at the top of history. But he is at the top of history for something he didn't do. It's not that he doesn't belong there. He didn't do what he's there for. He didn't free the slaves. He did not love black people. He did not grow into an understanding. As Edna Medford, Lincoln historian, says. That is incorrect. I believe Eric Foner also cites that there was a epiphany-like progression in Lincoln's political development over time. And that's just not true. The primary sources don't back that up. Secondary sources back that up. Primary sources don't. And the secondary sources are opinions, generally. They should be based on the primary sources until a scholar comes by and look at the primary sources and say, this is not lining up. So, again, we have to ask ourselves, if Lincoln saved the country, why does saving the country take a second seat to freeing the slaves? Which he didn't do. But when you hear about Lincoln, you don't hear he saved the country. You hear he freed the slaves. This country does not care about black folks. It just, broadly speaking, you're going to see in the comments of this video, get over it. History's over. They're not going to say that about the Holocaust. They're not going to tell Israel, hey, I know that that was your land at one time, but you shouldn't have came back and took it back from the Palestinians, and now we got an occupation. They're not going to say that. With 9/11, they're going to, the literal catchphrase for 9/11 is never forget. And that just happened. But slavery, get over it. We ain't going to talk about Native American genocide. We're not going to talk about that. So again, we have to ask ourselves, this is not about Lincoln. Lincoln was who he was, and Lincoln was the best man he could be. This is not about Lincoln. This is about the people here today. This is about the people who are controlling your education. This is about the people that's controlling your country. Why do you want me to believe that freeing the slaves is a higher priority to you than saving the country when we can't get the George Floyd Police Reform Act passed, the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act passed? Why am I supposed to believe that? Why am I supposed to believe that saving the country is secondary to freeing the slaves, if that's not the pulse of our interaction or politics?